So without further ado, as you're introducing yourselves, everyone, it's great to be here today. I'm Maddy Martin, the head of growth and education for Smith.ai. We are a 24/7 virtual receptionist service for calls, chats, text, and Facebook messages. And we do a lot more than answer calls. We screen, schedule, complete intake for you, make outbound calls. We help with that top of the funnel so that when it comes to closing, you have great quality leads who are doing consultations and who are ready to be, closed in the first place. So I'm going to introduce, and we'll actually let them introduce themselves, which is always sort of the best approach. But Sonia, Lakhany, Carol Williams, and Justie Nicol here, all Smith.ai clients, actually longtime clients, and also firm owners who have a lot of experience not only in running a law firm and practicing law, but also running really the business side of the law firm and having to be in that hot seat where you're the closer. So I'm just going to go around in the order in which I see you, but let's start with Sonia, and then we'll go to Carol and Justie.
Guys, a lot of familiar faces, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sonia Lakhany, also known as @TrademarkLawyerLady on Instagram if you're a social media person. But that's what I do through and through. It's been a decade and counting of just filing trademarks for hundreds and thousands of businesses now at this point. And I've written a book on it. I teach it to other attorneys. I speak about it. I love everything trademarks, and I've mastered it really, really well. So I think I'm one of the few, if not only, solo/small trademark firms in the US that has surpassed 1 million in revenue, which was last year. So trying to keep that going. We're almost there for 2020. We'll keep it going, but I definitely have mastered, I think, the marketing, the closing, the sales of trademarks. I mean, I can't talk to you about anything else. I'm a one-trick pony, but that's what I've got.
So that's a great point, and we should touch on that later with respect to specializing and how that may help you be a better closer with greater familiarity in just one practice area.
Absolutely. We'll talk absolutely about that. I've got tons to say.
And Carol and Justie too, right? I mean, Justie has actually branched out a lot and bringing in other attorneys this year, but, started with, a couple practice areas that were really specialized, and maybe even, the animal law stuff, Justie, that's something that we could particularly talk about, and how that overlaps with your passion, which probably makes you a better closer, right? So let's go to Carol, and then we'll come back to you.
Hey everyone, Carol Williams. I am in sunny South Florida. So there's no snow in my world, which is fantastic. I own a boutique immigration law firm. I've been practicing for 22-ish years now. Had my own firm for a little over 7, and love talking law firm ownership and running the business, practicing law. All I do is immigration. This is the only practice area I have ever had, that I ever want to have for the past 20-something years. And I love talking sales. So I am super excited to be here. I am a Smith.ai client as well, and they are part of my sales process. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Carol. All right, Justie, tell us about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Justie Nicol. I own and manage a partnership called Nicol, Gersch, Petterson in and around Denver, Colorado, but we operate virtually in about 1/3 of the state and provide access to justice to our clients, even in rural areas, by operating paperless and using technology to our benefit. So I'm pretty passionate about the business side of things. I love building things. And as Maddy Martin said, I branched out recently. I've been a longtime Smith.ai customer, even when I was solo. I have done every type of law, I swear, before I started my own thing, going on 6 years ago now. And then I brought a partner on in June of 2019, and she was pregnant at the time. And I was like, all right, well, we got 6 months to figure this out, because you're going on maternity leave for 3 months. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was like, get out. And so I ran her caseload and my caseload by really prioritizing intakes and everything. She came back from maternity leave right at COVID. And then COVID hit, and we thought we'd take a dip, and all we've done is double our revenues over last year. It's absolutely crazy because we're set up for it. Some of it was we added a family law partner in July of 2020 in the midst of COVID. So if things weren't hectic enough, let's just, market a whole new branch of the firm. But yeah, we've got 7 people and a team of probably 3 or 4 additional contract attorneys that we're looking to expand on right now because we're so busy.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I think, something that we have heard touched on already, getting into closing, you can't talk about closing, which, if anyone doesn't know what we're talking about when we talk about closing, it's actually getting that signed piece of paper, whether that's digital, your own thing, probably so. Are you getting that signature? It's one thing to have a really good conversation. It's one thing to have really good quality leads. Oh, the referrals are coming out of your ears. Fantastic. But if you don't close, really nothing else matters. And there's a lot of wasted money. I mean, everyone here knows how important it is to answer the phone, to be available for consultations, to communicate effectively. But the most important communication and the biggest area where there is sort of discomfort and the lack of business training and business acumen comes into play in an expensive way is with closing. So maybe we can get started with speaking, and whoever wants to take this, where were you when you first sort of ventured out on your own? And what is the most dramatic difference to how you close now that you would like people to take away from this discussion?
I will start. I will absolutely start. So I think this is, I'm just going to echo like kind of the theme of why we're here, like what's important about this, that I feel like as attorneys, as solo small firm, which I think majority of us are, it seems. I'm going to do my thing. Put a 1 in the chat if you are a solo small firm, like owner, attorney, just so we have an idea of who's in the room. And put a 2 with like, if not, and whatever it may be. Actually, the ones
over 10, staff, including attorneys.
Yeah. And the ones, put your practice area, because I like to know like who's around like that. This is my signature move. Like Maddy said, this is my signature move. Like we want to know who's here. It's the best way we can like kind of make it as, sort of like simulating real life. But I say this because like we work so hard as solo smalls to write those blog posts and get those videos out, and you're paying for leads, you're doing all this, you're working so hard. And then if, shameless plug for Smith, but if someone's not answering your phone after all that because you're in a meeting, right? And now that person's calling someone else, or they're like, oh, they're not there, or they move on to the next attorney, right? Or if you do get on the phone and then the conversation doesn't go the right way, like for whatever it is, like it's a waste and it's a shame because it's hard to get, people to call you in certain areas sometimes. And we just work really hard for it. And the beauty of closing and knowing how to do this is that that's actually less people that need to call, because if you're just closing all of them, then it could just be 10. It could just be 10 for the week. It could be 5 if you're closing 4 out of 5, right? So for me personally, where I feel like the shift came when I first resigned as an associate from my last law firm position, as opposed to now 5 of the 10 years I've been running my own practice. So the first 5 was elsewhere. So I feel like the biggest shift was like someone schedules a consultation or wants to chat with you and you're like, sure, what questions can I answer? And it's like, pew. 100%. And you're letting them be like, well, how much does this cost? And I'm like, oh, no, we're not leading with that. That is not what we're going to do.
That's the person
what we're not doing today is letting you lead the conversation. But that is where clients will go first. Because all they're thinking is, oh man, this shit's going to cost me a lot of money. Do I even need to do this? Like as a trademark lawyer, right? We're like your preventative. We're the vitamin. We're not your aspirin, right? Like,
are you turning it into an interrogation also? You might be setting yourself up for a dead silent conversation there, or you could be setting yourself up for like, some cross-examining, like really unpleasant conversation where you're the enemy until you win their heart.
Yeah. Or like throwing stupid questions at you. Like, so I was just curious, like, do I even need a trademark? Why are we on the phone if you're questioning the what? Like, this is not my job so what do you think about LegalZoom? I'm like, did I really make time out of my day and that's the thing, right? If you're gonna you work that hard, you get it, you're finally on the phone and you've dropped this, there's an opportunity cost. We think you're just sitting around. You're like, all right, I'll take a call. There's an opportunity cost for every minute you're on the phone doing this, you're not doing or able to do something else.
Totally.
And so the shift came from me trying to like just being there as a resource to I'm in the driver's seat. I have a script I have a framework for how this conversation is going to go. And I know it doesn't sound like a long time, but I'm hitting 6 years in January in that time frame. And once I figured it out, like the first couple months, I don't deviate for any reason. We follow the framework exactly, and it's process, time frame, and cost in that order. And we start with, hey, so great, how's your day going? Good. You have some niceties, I'll find something about the weather, college, wherever you are, whatever. I've been making a lot of jokes about like being trapped inside. Like my signature opener right now, seriously, I'll just give it all away. I don't care. I'm like, I'll open a conversation. I'm like, hey, how's your day going? They're like, well, good. I'm like, how's your day 942 of this shit? And they're like, honestly, it hasn't been so great. Like it breaks the ice a little bit, right? And obviously, choosing an attorney is a personality choice. At the end of the day, a lot of questions I get about marketing and about all this is like, well, how do I differentiate your personality? You can open with that and just be like, yeah, I'm not a regular attorney. I'm a cool attorney, right? Like we can chit, we can chit chat, we can have a conversation. But yeah, after that, I'm like, so tell me a little bit about your business. Like, what are you up to these days? How's your branding going? And I'll see how I can help. There's a 30 to 45 second introduction from them. Well, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. And I loop it off. I'm like, oh, okay. We're not going on and on about, right. I need to assess where you are. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, great. Let me tell you a little bit about the trademark process. I explain the three stages. And then I'm like, this is how long it's going to take. And then the variables, whatever. And I'm like, after all this, I want to pause for any questions you may have. Mm-hmm. Maybe answer whatever. I'm like, okay, great. Why don't I go ahead and get into our billing process now? Explain how we're flat fee and not hourly. And so, we'll get into the details, but that is my framework: process, time frame, cost, in that order. And I'm telling you everything. And it's like the scripting is based off of commonly asked questions, misconceptions. It's all embedded in there.
Anticipating the questions.
So it's already looped up in there. So by the time I finish my like 2 to 3 minutes, they're like, wow, that was really thorough. And no, I don't have any questions. And like, yeah, I'm ready to move forward. Like imagine your conversations, like 98% of them going, great. Yeah. Like I'm ready when you are. And I'm like, great. I ping my assistant. I'm like, send the follow-up right now. And we just get like, I'm not even moved to my next consultation before the retainers start coming in. That is how quickly and pinned down this process is. So I still do majority of them because I feel like that's something I don't want to delegate. We all kind of choose our stuff, but yeah, I mean, for me, that was a big shift that I really think is transferable from any practice area. You're in the driver's seat and you're not here to just answer questions and be a resource. Drive the conversation, know what you need to tell them, what's going to inform their decision, whatever it is your practice area or whatever their issues are, right? Their anticipations. And then, so that's my take.
There's a different set of questions that you're going to ask based on your practice area. I know that Justie asked certain questions like, do you have a court date scheduled that Sonia, you're probably not asking, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah.
So there are things that help inform her around, whether or not she's going to be willing to even have that conversation. And that's sort of a screening question. And then when you're prepared, all right, let's talk about the situation. Now, Carol, before even we started recording, you were talking about process. And I know that's something that you're extremely focused on. How did you come to appreciate why process is so important?
So yeah, we were talking about this before. So the reason I've come to appreciate a process, despite the fact that I'm totally type A and I like things to go the way I like them to go, is because I found myself when I first started my firm not knowing how to run a business. And so that included not having any idea about sales, not even knowing that there was sort of a difference between sales and marketing and that they had two very different functions. And so I found myself giving away all of this free, very valuable information when I first started, because I thought, oh, it's all about building rapport. It's all about having this conversation so that at the end of the conversation, they felt comfortable and then they would sign on the dotted line. But what was happening was they felt amazing because they were getting all this free information. I mean, I was literally getting off of the phone, doing research, calling them back and giving them more free information. Who wouldn't feel great, right? Like
my blood pressure is rising as I hear that. It's really rising.
You know what I mean? Like literally, like who wouldn't feel great about that? And so then I realized they weren't closing, like they weren't hiring me. And it took me a while to figure out because I was giving away everything. Like I was giving away all of this free information to them. And so when I started to dial that back and I started to really read about sales and read about marketing and figured out the difference between the two of them and realized that I needed a process and I needed to be in control of that process, it just started to be so much easier. And so like Sonia, I have it scripted. There are certainly different qualifying questions that I have to ask. I work with two very different populations for my client base, but I've streamlined my initial conversation with someone down to just about 7 minutes, quite honestly. In 7 minutes, I can pretty much determine whether or not I can help you. It doesn't mean I have figured out all the red flags, everything that could go wrong, because as lawyers, we're hardwired to figure out everything that can go wrong. And our instinct is to want to talk about that. I don't talk about what could go wrong, right? I talk about, can I help you? Because at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, I'm there to help you with that. And so I think always being doom and gloom, I have found, because I used to do this, I'm like, wow, I mean, but if this happened, then this, and then if that happened, oh my God. And I'd freak them out. I would freak them out and then I'd give them all sorts of free information. And I'm like, no, that's just, it's not a good look. So now I've really gotten it, basically almost down to 7 minutes. And then they will schedule a consultation. They feel comfortable. And when I get them in that consultation call, and I tell them, I set an agenda at the beginning of every single call. That's how I let them know that there is a process. That's how I let them know that I'm in control of this conversation and it's going to go in a very certain way. So I tell them it's my job during this time with you to figure out if I can help you and if we're a good fit to work together. And it's your job to figure out if you think I'm a good fit to work with you. And if at the end of the day, one, I can't help you, or two, we don't think we're a good fit, that's okay. You still walk away with good information. I also tell them I'm going to interrupt you because I need to get information so that I know whether or not I can even help you. Immigration is a huge, huge, huge topic. You may say something, I'm like, that's not the piece of immigration that I handle. So I don't want to waste your time, but I'm going to refer you to this person who I know can handle you, who I know is amazing, who I know is great. And if we go kind of down my process, I'll know by the end of the call, one, if I want to work with you, if I think we're going to be a good fit, because there are some practice areas where you may work with someone for like 6 months and then your case is over. I work with people for several years on average. So I really want us to have a good relationship and that we're partners. And so I tell them that during the consultation and and I tell them, it's okay if you feel like I'm not the right person for you. If you feel comfortable, tell me why, and I'm happy to send you to someone who I think is. But if you think I'm the right person and I think you're the right person for us to work together for years, let's make this happen. Like, I want to see you get to your goal just as much as you want to get there. Like, I enjoy seeing my clients succeed. And so when they hear that, and I think, and I'm genuine, I really do want to see my clients succeed. That's something I think that they really appreciate. And then at the end, we talk hard numbers. We talk numbers. We talk about when you are going to pay, what happens if you don't pay. I was so afraid of that piece of the conversation when I first opened my doors. And now I have no problems with that piece of the conversation because it's a vital piece to the conversation. It's a part of working with a business. And they expect you to talk about that. Because a lot of times, like Sonia said, they'll come in and say, okay, well, how much is this going to cost? I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm going to talk about what you're going to get, what I'm going to give to you. And I want to know what you expect from me. And then we'll get to the payment piece of it. But it's a process. And once I had a process in place, and I've certainly tweaked it over time, and I'm always looking at ways to tweak it and make it better. But once I have a process in place, it just feels so good and so natural.
Yeah, I think the cost being at the end is like very carefully placed because you need a context around it.
Mhm.
I don't like the word justify, but like internally for us, we can say that. Like I don't like to say that client facing, but it's true. I mean, let's call it what it is. Like they need some sort of justification. So if you're not the cheapest around as an attorney, which I don't recommend that you do because you don't, really ever make good money, then why not charge your worth? Like I'm definitely more expensive, I think, than the average trademark attorney, but I also like have made a habit of like encouraging people to raise their prices, but they need some context around that.
Mhm.
So now that they've heard your process and the questions you've asked, and the silent thing there is the authority, right? You're leading and there's the expertise. So that it's all this silent stuff that goes into, oh, okay, like I'm willing to pay that. That makes sense to me. But if you just throw it out there, like if you didn't know Louis Vuitton from Walmart, you'd be like, well, handbag's a handbag, isn't it? A lawyer's a lawyer.
Right,
You
that's
can do my
outrageously
immigration, and so can
expensive.
she. So, it matters. Context matters.
It does matter. And the other thing here is that if you set clear boundaries up front, if you introduce price in the first discussion, then you're not scared of it for the rest of the relationship because you already broke that ice, ripped off that Band-Aid if you're not comfortable with it. And once it's out there, right? So you don't have to go back to them later on and say, oh, I forgot to tell you this one thing, that makes you look disorganized, unprofessional, etc. If you come right out with it, then you set a standard, a foundation for control. And you also, in having this process where you are setting the next question out there and the next steps, for me, at least someone who has worked with attorneys in the past, I've been divorced, etc. And I know this gives me confidence as a customer, as a client, that they're going to be as prepared with every future thing that we do together. So if you look prepared in that first meeting, you set a standard for that sort of professionalism and preparedness in every future piece of work together. So
I was just going to jump in and say, I think that's the one thing that we all do is we start with a script and then we end with the price quote. And then a little bit of follow-up questions about that. But my intakes are similar, right? Like I'm a big fan of Billy Tarascio. I never even actually, Billy's Modern Family Practice is amazing. And she's got scripts on there for free for what she does. And I've kind of morphed over time too, like Carol. The biggest thing that I think new people who are not used to this kind of hard push, hard ask, is you get this feeling like, I went to law school, so I wasn't a used car salesman. What the hell am I doing, right? Like when you're your own firm, like there is
school, right?
It's right. And I mean, my undergrad is in business. So like I did this stuff,
well,
right?
You're a property manager. You actually have a very unique and competitive advantage in knowing how to run businesses.
Yeah. But at the same time, I never learned how to sell. And I never did cold calling. And people who did telemarketing, like telemarketing, not the skiing, but the telemarketing, I telemarked too. So
all from my college annual fund while I was a student.
You're amazing at sales, right? Like it teaches you this. So what I did early on was I found a small business development center class for sales forecasting and what I needed to do to get my head around, okay, this is how many people. For me, it was data. Like, this is how many people I need to make a new connection with each week when I'm starting out. Like, I had a goal. I wanted to send out 10 new business cards and, shake hands with 10 new people I'd never met with before.
So in order to hit your goal, knowing sort of what your target conversion rate is, you looked at the top of the funnel and you said, I need to pour this much water in the pot to reduce it down to this much chicken stock.
Yep, exactly. And it was early on, that was the best thing that I did was forecast what sales needed to look like so I could make the money that I needed to do to make my, firm float, because it was basically just me. And then I followed the script on intakes for sure. And I've gotten it simplified. So my clients are not business people. They are straight up 7th grade reading level, if I'm lucky, mostly have mental health issues. I do criminal defense, for God's sake, right? Like half of my clients come court appointed. So we have a really, really simplified signing process. It's all digital. And I start my my calls with the same way, like, hey, these are the screening questions that I have ran through Smith.ai, that I have ran through my type form. This is what you told us. I'm going to parrot back to you what you told us. And then I'm going to ask pointed questions about what you told us, because we are asking so much detail up front that we're not getting crap leads anymore. Like, we're getting qualified leads. And some of it is, we ask on the type form, how do you plan to pay? Because we're not accepting pro bono. So we flat out, like, we offer a ton of different financing: 3-month internal financing interest-free, 6-month internal financing interest-free on felony cases. We have an external payment processor that we can get a lender to finance your entire case for you. So we ask on there right up front, are you having family and friends help pay for your stuff? You know, because then I think about, like, okay, at the end of this call, I have to also turn in the third-party guarantee form. Right. So we have an extra signature that clarifies, even though they pay, they don't get to direct the legal, and they don't have confidentiality. So dad or mom.
That's true. Right.
Right. Yeah. So there's an extra form. And I'm thinking already from this initial intake, these 10 questions, what I need to do during this. We always ask, do you have a former lawyer? You know, like, are you looking to make a change? If you're looking to make a change from the public defender's office, like, we get that. But if we're your third private attorney, there's a problem. Big red flag.
In family law, you'll probably see more of that.
Big red flag. Yeah. As red as this cup. Yes. Happy holidays. So at the end of the call, though, we do 10 minutes of so, like, getting to know each other, breaking the ice, doing like the decade of 2020 jokes really do work right now.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like, 10 minutes getting to know each other, getting to understand the legal problem, maybe a little bit of question and answer more for, like, the next 5 minutes. So, like, the first 15 minutes of our 30-minute consult is just conversation. And then the last 15 minutes, okay, I'm like, all right, this is what I think we can help you with. This is what I don't think we can help you with. And a lot of times I'm one of those attorneys that is not going to sell somebody based on fear. You hire me or you go to jail. That doesn't fly here.
Right. Like, sounds like you're in a really bad situation. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going to use fear tactics to get you into the door. I'm going to tell you, I don't think you need an attorney if you don't need one. And I'll trade that for a good Google review, and I'll get off the phone in 15 minutes. If I think you need an attorney, then I'll be like, okay, here's why I think you need an attorney. You know, this isn't just a first-time DUI. This is a third, and you're one step away from a felony. We're talking about possible jail time. We're talking about jail during COVID, right? Like, kind of just talk to them and be like, all right, I can help you on the legal side, or it sounds like you may have a legal issue, but I need you to do some mitigation too. We don't just do this as we're going to handle everything for you. You're part of the team. And so then I lay out, this is how teamwork works for us. We give you access to your evidence with a Dropbox link as soon as you download it. And I don't think that's recommended in every state, but in Colorado it is. We give you access to your pleadings from the beginning. We don't hide the ball at all. You can see what we're doing. You can see what we're drafting. We schedule a discovery review for you. Here's what the first 2 weeks after retaining us looks like. And this is the realistic expectation on time frame. And people are just like, wow, that's what I needed to know, because criminal, it's out of your control. You show up when they tell you to show up. And when you get an attorney, that kind of changes a little bit. You have a little bit more control. So I found getting really comfortable with sales, having those red flags up front, ending with, this is how much it's going to cost you, and this is why we're different. And now we've taken it to the next level, and we actually put in our acuity, our follow-up emails. Once you book an appointment with us, before you've talked to anybody in our office, besides maybe Smith, you get an infographic about what to expect for your initial consultation. 10 minutes to talk about the case, 5 minutes to talk about, you know, question and answer, 10 minutes to really close it down and talk about what the fee looks like and next steps. And it's broke down right in there. These are our attorneys, you know, and they get it in their email. And I've had people reply to that, because we also ask, if you want us to review any paperwork, send it through this. And I get more information before I even sit down to do the thing. And then when I'm in that middle section, right, like, that's the gray area where you get people who are like, oh, I don't know, it's so expensive, or do I really need a lawyer? And I'm like thinking, they really need a lawyer. This is a felony. You're freaking crazy, right? Like, what I have done is worked very closely on the 9 most common objections that we get within our team, and we've scripted those answers, right? So a big one for us is I have another attorney down the road that'll do this for this a third DUI. He's going to do it for $3,000. You're telling me it's $5,000. And I'm like, you're welcome to talk to other attorneys. You'll be back.
Ask them about their process.
It is what it is.
What they charge.
And then what we do is after the call is over, I put them in the email drip campaign where I send them the PDF on what to ask the other attorneys.
Oh, I love
And I give
that.
them questions.
Oh, I love that.
Nice.
Totally brilliant. Another thing.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Doing video actually that's unlisted on YouTube. Maybe it's on a page on your website, but sort of the thanks for signing, here's what's next, or thanks for signing, you made the right choice, and sort of like building up a little momentum for that kickoff of the engagement.
Yeah, and we like infographics a lot for that sort of stuff. So we have like 3 or 4 we send out, like, meet our team, here's why we're different, here's what to ask another attorney, here's some helpful information just about where the hell to go.
And that's going to depend on your practice area too, right? Like, you know, Sonia working with someone, Carol working with another, you working with another, you may, and you probably do for everyone who's here, you know where your clients are. Like, where are you meeting them? Are you meeting them at the 7th grade reading level? Or are you reading them at a master's degree, right? So if you're working with people who are, you know, white collar professionals or in blue collar roles or whatever the case may be, you are best served by addressing them in the, you know, ways and where their habits already exist. You know, if you expect that they're a 7th grade reading level, maybe a short infographic is better than a sort of long drawn out video that might appeal to more of a business law client.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple of things. So first of all, I feel like a lot of attorneys or a lot of our participants may feel like, well, like, I don't know, right? I don't know the commonly asked questions. I don't know what stuff to incorporate, you know, and unless like this is month 1 of your practice, you do know, but you got to give yourself more credit. It's up here. And so if you need to flesh that out, like, one thing that I would recommend, I mean, I teach a lot of attorneys some of this stuff, and I feel like I didn't do this because I didn't need to, because I was just thinking about it and paying attention. But I feel like one really great exercise is get a spiral notebook from Target and do a diary of every single consultation call. Dear diary, today I talked to so-and-so, and these are the questions they asked me. These are the objections they had. This is the issue. This was their answer when I said this, whatever. Like, recap it like you're a doctor, like for a patient file, like what happened, what they said, whatever. Absolutely. And then like, so that way you have some data. Really, data is not numbers. Data is also facts. Data is also questions. It's all the pieces, right? So that's one way to kind of see trends. But I wanted to say what I love about Justie that she didn't actually come out and say, but you touched on a cardinal rule of mine. And I feel like I need to like establish this for everybody. Like, I have a few cardinal rules of how I operate in life. One of them for the law practice is make it easy for people to pay you. What she said.
I circled that to come back to. I need notes because I'm making notes.
Letter of engagement, online payment links. Yes. Oh, well, but you know, signing software is this much a month. I don't care. It's worth 1 new client. LawPay takes too many fees. Are you serious? Like, what are you operating like a
attorneys
lemonade stand? Like, get real.
I'll drop this 39% faster from the Clio report, which you guys gals always hear me citing. 39% faster when you take electronic payments, and the vast majority of clients expect you to take online payments.
In this day and age, if you are asking me to print and sign the contract, I have news for you. I mean, I have behaved this way as like a hirer for services. I'll pick someone else. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I have a printer. It's in that cabinet, like tucked away, because that's how much I don't want to look at it. And it's new. I got it because of the pandemic. I didn't want it before, but sometimes life has driven me to that. But it's like, I don't use it. I don't want it. Like, I'm going to pick somebody else, because you need to make the hurdle between, oh, I'm really interested in this amazing consult you gave me, and you need to just close that gap as soon as, I mean, that is part of sales, which brings me to the other point that I wanted to touch on that kind of, it's like a cloud over this whole thing that we don't talk about enough, which is something called imposter syndrome. So if you're not familiar with it, I really encourage you to Google it. There's an assessment that I circulate. It's not mine. I just found it. But it's a really interesting quiz to kind of see like, wow, I actually do have a lot of issues around psychology and money. And I know it kind of sounds like woo-woo fifi, but it's stay with me for like 30 seconds. It's your money story and how you grew up around money, and like things that date way back actually influence your ability to charge what you feel like you're worth. You're like, well, I don't know. And I want to just blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to follow up. And like, it's all up here, right? So that's another thing. I mean, I cannot tell you the breakthroughs I've seen my attorneys that I teach when we talk about this piece of it, because that piece of it gives you the balls, really,
identifying it,
to throw the rate out there and be like, you know what, it's $3,500 for that. Seriously, yes, that's how much it is. Well, but okay, like Justie said, right? Like, and it is what gives you that confidence. I will say this, that I've played around with this a lot, like where the confidence comes from, and it flows from, you know, the top. It's the confidence that allows you to post on a video. You're like, yeah, I'm worthy of this. I can put this out there. Like, people won't laugh at it. It's not stupid. All the way through, yes, I want to have this consult. I can drive it. I can do this, and I can charge my worth, and I can, you know, do all these things. But there was once where I was like, let me just see like how this conversation, I charged $7,000 for a trademark process, and they paid it in 5 minutes after the consult. And I was like, holy shit. But like, that is, I mean, I don't do that. That's to me asinine. Like, but like, it tells you what not only closing skills, but what confidence can do for you. I mean, you gotta kind of think about that. So I just wanted to share those two pieces. Is cardinal rule, make it easy for people to pay you. Put yourself in the shoes and say, if I called, is the number getting answered every time? Cough, Smith, cough. Okay. After that, is there electronic letter of engagement? Is it online? Like bam, 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 bam. I don't want any back and forth. Don't make it hard for me.
On
Make it
to
easy.
that
And then
point.
number two, look into your imposter syndrome issues, because I swear to you, we all have them. I do too. Seriously, we all do. But like, it's really important to look at this.
And I want to give Carol a chance to.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that I say often, because I deal with individuals who, in their culture, bargaining is just a part of doing business.
Mhm.
They full on expect me to bargain because that's what they're used to doing back at home. They bargain for everything.
Mhm.
So I have, honest to
Know
goodness,
where your clients are coming from.
yeah, I mean, and that's exactly it, is know who your client base is. So part of my client base lives their life bargaining for everything. So it's not something that I take personally, but I have literally, I had a consult earlier this week who I closed, but who 3 times said, well, is there a discount? And I have said, I don't discount my work ever. So when they asked me the second time, I was like, no, there's no discount. I don't discount my work ever.
I love that.
And so at the very end, again, she was like, but are you sure there's not a discount? And I'm like, oh, I'm sure. I don't discount my work ever, because you know what? Sally Mae doesn't appreciate when I take a discount. My cable bill doesn't appreciate when I take a discount. And frankly, I like nice things. So I'm not going to discount my work, because at the end of the day, you don't want less work done, right? So
absolutely. Do you want me to do discounted work for you?
And you don't want less value. But at the same time,
but you don't take offense at it, right? Because
and I was going to say, at the same
their process,
I don't take offense to it, because for many of my clients, it's cultural. So when I know when I know where the origin of it comes from, it's not personal. But also for my clients where it's not cultural, we have to remember, as lawyers, we've gone to law school. We now have tons of friends. They're all lawyers. So we know what it's like to be around and work with other lawyers. A lot of our clients don't. Sometimes we're the first lawyer that they ever come in contact with.
Or the first great lawyer they've ever come in contact with.
Fair. but that's why I think that that first call, our sales call, is so important, because it is an opportunity for us as lawyers to explain to them what they can expect from us and how we work. And you know what? I'm not going to work the same as the person that has the ad on the billboard and the park bench. No offense to them. It's great marketing if it works for you, right? But that's not how I work. I'm not a contingency law firm. So if you've spent all of your time at home during COVID, watching television and hearing, you don't pay me unless I get you money, that's fantastic. I'm not a contingency practice, but potential clients don't understand that. They may not understand that they even have to pay for a consultation. So I used to.
The majority of marketing is coming through contingency practices.
Yeah, also. I admit I used to take it absolutely 100% personal. And one day I was like, you know what? They just don't know. And it's not their fault. It's my job.
That tone to the conversation. Exactly. You don't take the conversation off in that sort of combative way that it can go if you let it. So There's a couple questions that are coming through here in the chat, and it's already been 45 minutes somehow. So I'm going to just really quickly tackle, because I know Justie's going to get to one, but there was a question, reasonably so, that was back and forth a little bit around, well, if you see the answers come through that intake form, that screening form initially, not indicating that this person is a good potential fit, do you still take the consultation? Do you still go through this process? Well, what do you think the answer is? The answer is no. If you can spare your time and it's very clearly not a fit, then you basically have, a couple options. One, you can take the call if you want to ask a couple more questions to make an even better referral, or you can cancel the call and make a referral. But the conclusion is the same. You're going to try and make a referral unless you think that would be damaging to your referral partners, right? If there's a really big red flag. Otherwise, your goal is to help that person and quickly, but your goal changes from trying to capture that business to trying to refer someone who can capture that business.
Yeah, and that was going to be where I put the answer in the chat too, where I was going. With the other question here, which was about unbundling, we actually do discount. So we offer a student rate and a veteran rate, because it's not always like, if you're in the criminal justice system, you're not there by choice, right? So it's also hard. And then we market to kind of that group as well. So what ends up happening is we get people in the pipeline, and then they want free legal advice, or they can't actually afford to pay. Even with asking that question, they actually can't. Or the issue is one that is so simple that I'm like, I don't want to really jump in here, right? Like, it's not a good use of my time. I'm going to charge so little and make no difference, right? Animal law, I know, Maddy, and you brought this up earlier. I actually am one of the few attorneys in Colorado where I am actually an expert in animal law. Like, I teach this at university level about prosecuting animal cruelty. You know what that does not translate to? Criminal defense work. But if you Google me, like, you only get animal law, like, from that context. So people are calling like, my girlfriend stole my dog and I want it back. We actually changed that and put in, because I know enough about all this stuff. I've written the animal dog bite statute. I've done Replevant, it's not a moneymaker for our firm. Instead of giving it away during the consult, what we did was we built DIY packages where you pay me $1,000 and I talk you through how to do it. I can review pleadings that you write. I will not ghostwrite for you, but we moved it into a money-making revenue stream instead. And we cut the free time down to 10 minutes. And then I built a template using Canva, and I just plug and play. And I crank that work out, and I make $1,000 an hour doing that sort of stuff, instead of giving away 30 minutes of free information.
So there's some things that are more easy to piece out, and there are even some things that maybe you don't piece it out, but there are flat fee packages that you put together. In estate, some other family law, some practices, you can put together a package that's predictable if you want to go that route. And that's very transparent, maybe even with prices on your website, and you have less of that conversation. There is a question in the chat around, we know that some of you have these conversations. They seem great. There's no objections. The conversation goes as well as it could possibly go. They say, send me, I'm going to sign right now. And then they don't sign. And you're wondering, Am I, you know, in bizarro world? Like, what just happened? I feel like I have a pretty good read on things. What is your suspicion, you know, in that scenario? What most commonly happens for any of you? Do you want to speak to this?
I think you've got to have a follow-up process. I think if they're not calling you back, they either, one, were never serious, which is, you know, sometimes happens. Two, they were only shopping for free information. But I think sometimes they haven't decided 100% that they really need a lawyer. And they're afraid. Again, a lot of time, especially for, because I think you said this was for the criminal practice, they're afraid. Like, they don't know what they don't know.
Also makes it real to engage the attorney. You can't be in denial anymore.
I think the way that you potentially get around people ghosting you in the beginning is to have a really buttoned up follow-up system. You know, every 3 days, touch them, you know, and you decide how far out past the initial conversation you want to follow up. But at some point, you just got to let them go. And so as a way to protect yourself, have a clause in your contract that says this is void after X number of days, so that they can't come back, you know, 6 months later when things are really heating up and really hot, or they've tried to DIY and now they really need help, but they're also looking at a completely different issue than what you initially talked to them about. But I think if you set a follow-up schedule, you will find that they weren't really ghosting you. They just didn't know that next step. They were terrified of that next step. But the law firm and the person that sort of gently nudges them along, you will actually close that. Because I've had several of those folks. You know, I think immigration and criminal practices they're sometimes very much intertwined, but you can have a population of people that are just terrified to even have a conversation. So just, you know, just gentle prodding along the way will get them to trust you, know you, like you, sign on the dotted line, and then they will become your best referral source later.
We automate, and we automate about 3 of the 6 follow-up steps that we do too.
Yeah.
Some of it's personal stuff, but I delegate that all to staff, or Smith.ai, who will make outbound calls for you. I'll often send Smith a script and just be like, hey, these are the leads that didn't call this week or didn't touch in this week. Can you just call them and make sure that they don't have any additional questions? If they do, here's the calendaring link to book them with my assistant to make sure that they can make the LawPay link work. But every single call, I'm doing the same thing at the end. There's 2-step process to hire us. The first step is you sign the contract. The second step is you pay 50% down of whatever flat fee I'm quoting you. We send you the link to pay and the link to sign. You can do both on your phone. If you've got your credit card handy, I'll cut 50% of that out and I'll take your credit card right now or the phone. And they give me their credit card number before I get them off the first 30 minutes.
100%. And
also, I was going to echo that. Like, we had the question about ghosting that like is above a little bit. Like, one thing may be to walk through the retainer with them on the phone and be ready to take the credit card and say, okay, so if you'd like to move forward, great. So would you like to use a Visa or like, what are we doing? I mean, but that's an imposter syndrome thing too. Like I don't know, but it might be part of it is like, oh my God, like, do I have the gall to do that? Yes, you do.
Can I follow up? Do I want the answer?
Yes,
but then also, is there anyone who is going to make this decision with you? Now, in criminal defense, maybe that's not the case, but maybe you actually do need to go talk to the family, for example, who's going to pay your bills. Or do you think that it's right for me, mom, to, sign on to this financing plan with Justie's law firm? I mean, there's a lot of people who want to have discussions, and they're not always going to tell you that they need to have that discussion, but they're more likely to do so if you ask them directly.
Ask them. Yes, just
anyone who needs to make this decision with you, or do you need to talk to anyone before making this decision if they don't give you that credit card right then, if they don't sort of make a strong indication they're going to sign.
And I ask people too, is this affordable to you?
Oh yeah.
If not, talk to me about why and what I can do to make it more affordable, because we work with people, right? Like we care about people, and that signals that from the very beginning too. So that's what I ask. If this is not affordable to you, okay, is there somebody who in your family is going to help you make these payment arrangements? Would you like me to talk to them? I can make myself available for a 10-minute follow-up phone call. Oh, they're right here. Okay, put me on speaker, right? Like, you know, half the time it's that simple, or they call me together. And then I'm just like, okay.
This, I think, goes all the way back to the very beginning of your conversation, where at least I tell people, I'm going to ask you questions. So from the very beginning, from the first 30 seconds, they are primed and ready for me to interrupt them and ask them questions. I haven't told them what I'm going to be asking them questions about, but I've told them I'm going to be asking them questions so that I can get all the information that I need. So I would challenge you folks, don't be afraid to ask questions. Just tell them up front you're going to be asking questions. Like so many times I'll get on the phone and they'll be like, so what are we going to talk about? How does this all work? And I'm like, well, I'm so glad you asked, because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you what your big goal is, and then you're going to tell me, but be aware, I'm going to interrupt you. And I don't mean to be rude, but I just need to make sure that I get all the information from you that I need so that I can help you.
Because I have so much experience, right?
Yeah.
Like that in your client's mind is what they're reading when you say that. It says, like, I have the experience, I know what to ask. It builds trust and it validates why they contacted you and that they're in the right place, right?
Yeah, I think you have to set the tone from the beginning, and then that gives you leeway to, to start really digging into their lives and asking questions.
I also wanted to add one thing I think it was it Melanie that was asking about the ghosting? Well, and I mean, this happens to a lot of people. So alternative perspective, one thing that may help you too in the spirit of research and data collection is, maybe like a 2-for-1 would be like, you could spend, early January, I know it's the holidays now, you could spend early January being like, we're just doing a courtesy outreach. Hope you had a wonderful holiday season. We just want to see how your experience has been. Like every time you buy something with a company, don't you get the how did we do survey, like at the end of the receipt or in an email or whatever? I mean, you can be no different, right? I mean, this is a good information collecting. So you get the whole like, wow, they just reached out to me. They don't want anything from me. Everything's fine. Like they're just seeing, but you could actually do like a survey and say, hey, so we were just curious, like what made you choose us? And like, how did you find us? And do some information collecting. Choose 10 clients that you're like, the 10, if I could just have 200 of these types, right?
Exactly.
The favorite kinds you have, whether it's the type of matter that they're doing or their personality, figure out the common denominators. I mean, like, we can talk about this stuff on a webinar, but there's some legwork involved here, right? If you're hitting these hurdles, there's going to be some legwork. And, it is kind of fascinating to step back and say, okay, the last 3 months of 2020, okay, who are my favorite clients? Who did I like the most? Who are the easiest? Like, oh, they just paid. It was easy. But it's not just ability to pay. We know that. There's personality types. There's certain types of matters, whatever. Look at the common denominators. What do you want to rinse and repeat in clients? What would you dream of having 200 more of this type of client or matter or whatever? Figure out the common denominators, look at what the patterns were, and reach out to those 10 or 15 people and just ask and just say it's a courtesy. And, just wanted to do a call and see, how we can further serve you, but also like, how did you find us? Just want to understand like what made you choose us and what do you like about what do you like about us as a law firm? What makes you happy with your decision? Do some research. Seriously. I mean,
absolutely.
And so that's an alternative to just the mystery of why people ghost. And, if you figure out what's working, guess what? You could just do more of that and it's rinse and repeat.
I mean, if there is one thing that comes out of that also, I mean, that's really like a 2-for-1, 3-for-1 sort of conversation. Like you find out that, there may have been actually a discrepancy or a gap, and that person's going to share information with you that's both positive and negative, and you get to learn, a little bit more than you expected to. The other benefit is that you can ask them for a review if they haven't already written one, because they've just written it for you by speaking to you on the phone.
I love that.
Fresh in their mind, ask them to post it, and then you get something that is outward and also for internal processes.
I also want to add one last thing here, that in the event that and I'm sure this is some percentage of the ghosting, because it always is, right? Like the price that they heard just like didn't match up to what they had in their head.
Right.
That's a thing, right? It's just like everybody comes in with a number or a range. And, you know, like we talk about context and, you know, why we have scripting and framework to provide context for it and somewhat of a justification, right? But sometimes it's not good enough for them. Like they don't, it's not a matchup in their mind. This is just my 2 cents on the matter. You know, people can feel free to disagree with me. I would, if that's an issue for you, if you feel like money is a consistent issue with clients not being willing to move forward with you or like asking for discounts or anything around money, I would stay away from the following words and phrases in your marketing and on your website. Reasonable, low cost, affordable.
Totally.
Like I cannot
100%.
understand why people use these terms. And I get it. Like Justie, for example, like your practice area is one where you're serving people like in a certain, you know, so I respect that. And there are reasons, right? Like
Still not using those terms.
maybe lead with that, or that's part of what you do. But
Still
like
doesn't do that.
majority of us, like, I'm sorry, I'm a business attorney. So if you don't have a like, you know what I mean? That's my take on it. But I cannot understand why we use phrases that that work against us. And then I see, you know, I'm on Boss Lady ESQ, which is like a huge 8,000 attorney. I'm one of the admins. I manage my own group of trademark attorneys, which is like 1,700 attorneys. I mean, I'm in part of all these groups, and we're consistently complaining about boundaries and how we get emails at 10 at night. Well, do you have the word accessible on your website? I mean, like stuff like that is like reasonable, low cost. So marketing matters. And believe it or not, again, back to the imposter syndrome. I swear I'm done saying that for today, but you do have control over who and what calls you and what contacts you. You're a magnet. You are drawing it in. So take a step back and look at your marketing too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say that actually it's extremely important in how you set expectations on the call. You're setting expectations, what Sonia is getting at, far before you get on the call. So when it's your screening form, if you don't see the answers that you're looking for, then pivot, refer, etc., as we talked about. Also make sure that you're asking the right questions. One of the other things that you can ask, and sorry, we're going to go a minute over because we just have so much to say here, but one of the other things you can ask is, how ready do you feel to hire an attorney? Because that also can take the temperature. Yes, we're talking about exit interviews and how did you feel about the experience? And, you know, were there any things that I could have done better? Or would you refer us to a friend, etc.? But if you take the temperature up front, all the other answers may look like a gold star waiting for you. But if they say they're a 3 out of 10 in terms of readiness to hire an attorney, then you have to take that with a grain of salt. And you go into that conversation expecting, or even directly asking, hey, so why did you mark yourself a 3 out of 10? And you could say, you know, you could hear something like, oh, my very close relative is telling me this is not a good idea, or such and such, right? So get to the root of that number, and then you'll also have a more productive conversation. Now, we are way out of time, unfortunately. You know, I just want to take, and if you have to go, go. And that goes for any of our panelists too.
I feel like we should do this monthly. There's with 4 of us.
Because this is like, I mean, we could have spent a day talking about this. Maybe we should, but there will be a follow-up to this for sure. One of the things that I see most often, this is my parting question for you, and yes, we're going to go a minute over. There are a lot of people who are really uncomfortable with remote selling in work environments. They are very used to, and I know everyone here, you've been selling remote and you have been on the phone, video calls, you're very comfortable with it. But I'm sure there was a time when you can relate to people who are new at this for the first time and they're thinking, I really got so much energy. I thrived in that office environment, sitting across from someone and making that sale. You know, there's an aspect of just doing it and getting into a new habit, but is there anything that quickly you would recommend for people who are sort of feeling discomfort there, or lack of confidence, or imposter syndrome, as Sonia rightly pointed out?
Yes. So I have always been a remote firm. I have always dealt with my clients virtually, in part because some of my clients are outside of the United States. So building rapport on the phone or via Zoom is not something new, and it's not new for any of us. Long before video calls, long before FaceTime, we spent time cultivating relationships with our friends on the phone, right? If you were a 70s child, you spent a significant amount of your time on the phone. So you can and have developed relationships on the phone. You have called customer service and conned your way into having a late fee overturned, conned your way into getting a 10% discount on something, right? We've all done it. So just because it's now coming in the context of work, don't let it freak you out. You are having a conversation. You are figuring out if you can help someone. Yes, you can still talk with your hands. That will come through online. That will come through with your voice. But we've all cultivated relationships not being in person. Now, we may be a little rusty at it, right? Because I'm quick to text, but we still know how to cultivate relationships. So I think we've all got to get out of our own head about it and just remember that we all know how to pick up a phone. We all know how to put our phone to our ear, have a conversation, and get what we need. We've been cultivating relationships since we were children, right? It's not difficult. So part of it is you just have to do it, but recognize that you're already doing it. So all of these calls that we've had via Zoom with people that we haven't seen from high school in 20 years, you know, or law school, all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, Zoom is so great. It's no different than with a client. Like our potential clients are doing the exact same thing. So if you liked to run your mouth on the phone or you like to text a whole lot, you can in fact be very successful closing clients on the phone or via Zoom or via Skype. And if y'all need to practice, call me. I'm more than happy to chit chat on Zoom with you. I'm more than happy to like help you feel comfortable with all of like the controls or whatever, but nobody, like our potential clients expect there to be technical hiccups. If you have a potential client who has a school-age child at home, they are going to understand that you started talking with the mute on. They're going to understand that like your Wi-Fi connection is unstable. It's just leveled the playing field for a lot of us. So you just have to remember your potential clients are people. Like we're all people. We're all just trying to get through this.
And having process is going to help you be more confident if you know your approach to these conversations and you're not just winging it, because that is the single best way to make yourself uncomfortable on a call.
I was going to suggest also, so a lot of this stuff I've shared, you can hear like emulates what big brands and big companies do. Cause I'm like, well, if it works for them, and it does, it works for them. And also like it works for these global brands, their practices, their routines. And so a fraction of that, like a little sprinkling in your law practice is really all you need. And so the concept of focus groups, right? Like, you know, why not grab a neighbor or a friend or somebody, or, you know, you can pay people for their time, you know, like how companies do, and say, can I do a practice consult with you? Take an average person, or think about who you know, right? From like high school, college, law school. I mean, law school classmates are great, other lawyers. And I mean, again, we're all part of these groups on Facebook, and just say, I'm willing to compensate 3 to 5 attorneys for their time. Right? This is a well worth it marketing expense. Think of it that way. And where the end of the year, you need to probably find stuff to spend, you know, as deductible expenses, right? I know I'm like trying to figure that out, but pay people for their time and say, can I just do a role play consult with you? And, you know, as somebody who would be interested in this service, who's my target market, and I mean, another lawyer would be awesome, probably. Or, you know, take a non-lawyer, take your people in your network, friends, colleagues from the past, companies, whatever, and just practice on them, right? And they will tell you, especially if they're paying or you're paying them, they'll be honest with me. No, critique me, tell me the good, the bad, the ugly. And so again, we can talk about this in theory all the time, but you have to be a student of your own business. That's what I've learned, you guys, is I'm a student of, I'm constantly studying what works, what doesn't, reorganize it, re-engineer it, you know, and you have to do those things. If you're not willing to put in these pieces of work, then you're going to have to stay a lawyer, but you can't be a business owner. Like, the part about being a business owner is this part. This is it. Like, you just have to.
And for your peace of mind, you know, moving forward, that you know exactly what your foundation is built upon, right? Like, how can you guarantee yourself, you know, you're relying on yourself for your income, steady income in the future, if you don't have these repeatable processes? So Sonia, you know, just to piggyback on what you're saying, if you get that focus group, if you do those mock consults, especially with other attorneys who know exactly what you're looking for, give them a role to play. Be the really difficult, asking every question under the sun. Be the skeptical person. Be the person who's sort of quiet and mousy and doesn't ask all the right questions, and you have to try and read their mind, right? Ask if you can follow up with them, and if there's anything in your follow-up process, even, like, it doesn't have to stop at just that consult. You can have some follow-ups, and maybe you see, oh, there's an overlap, or you sent me 2 emails in one day, or why are you sending this to me? It's about your different practice area that doesn't relate to what I came in about. That's also something that's important to audit. So let's get, you know, one last comment and then how to reach you, and we'll wrap up because I know we're already over. So thanks for everyone who's still sticking around.
I was just also going to reiterate, as far as doing Zoom and phone, quite frankly, my clients don't want to come to me anyway. They never did. They never want to take time out of their day to come to a lawyer's office, ever. Like, yeah, never. And our family law clients are the same way now. Everybody is so busy all the time. It's really easy to pick up the phone for 30 minutes. Do you know how hard it would be to operate in a third of the state of Colorado if I made you drive to my office for the initial consult? I cut my target market in about 1/10 versus what it would be online. So it opens up doors for people who don't have transportation, right? Like, I do a lot of DUI work. You lose your license, you can't come see me. How the heck are you supposed to find a lawyer if you can't get to their office, right? We really play up technology too, and we're pretty big. We market ourselves as the anti-old white dude law firm. So we're pretty big into blowing up the system, and technology is a way to do that. And we tell clients, frankly, the fact that I don't have an office for you to come to means I can charge you less. My overhead is minimal. And that is a selling point for people. Like, they know that the money they spend on me isn't going to my landlord. It isn't going to insurance. It's going to get quality legal work. And I can't afford to do things like cut discounts when I need to, right? But also raise my rates at different times.
Solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, it solves a lot of problems in different ways. And we have a nice little mix. So with that, thank you, Maddy, for having me. I appreciate it as always. I love seeing you, ladies. Sonia, it was nice to meet you. Carol.
Nice to meet you too, both of you.